Right. For the long range planning piece, the president had specifically requested an opportunity to talk directly to the trustees about what they're doing on their campuses right now with regard to planning for the future and transition. My thought is really just to turn it over to them and let them share with you what they're up to, and starting with Elaine and NVU.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair Hines. We are in the process of creating a committee. It is called the NVU Strong Task Force, and it is comprised of 16 members in our community. When we are talking about our community, we are including faculty, staff, students, student families, alumni, and community members. We've had over 286 nominations submitted, and from those we have chosen our 16 members in this committee. This committee will be chaired by our provost, Nolan Atkins, and we are looking forward to accomplishing some significant work. To that end, we launched the committee on May 7th, and at that time, what we did is we started talking about a number of issues that you see on the screen now. Specifically, we started talking about, we wanted a very clear statement of the problem. And so we began by talking about, obviously, COVID-19. That is one issue that is before us. We also went back and, as a foundational document, we talked about some of the existing challenges that were facing the Vermont State Colleges system, such as declining demographics, although we felt that we had a response to the declining demographics by increasing our recruitment of students outside of New England. We talked about years of low state support. And again, I was heartened by the Chancellor's discussion this morning that perhaps we should be cautiously optimistic about some changes in this area moving forward. We talked about the excess capacity that we have in facilities, and we've currently been meeting with a variety of agencies and interested parties who may be interested in leasing some of our facilities. And then we talked about the increased disruption of traditional higher education. And with that, we understand that, the status quo is not what we need moving forward. So our next charge is to figure out how to sustain NVU for the future, how to right-size NVU in order to weather some of the challenges moving forward. And we decided that we needed to look at a potential budget reduction of 15 to 25%. And specifically, I know that the board has asked us to work within the current budget that we have, and that does not take into account any potential state or federal assistance that we hope to receive. So this is without that figure. But I wanted to be clear on how we kind of calculated the 15 to 25% figure. And it was based on adding together where we are currently in Q3. Then we added the COVID expenses that we are estimating, such as all the reimbursements to students, the residential reimbursements. And to that, we also are adding some of our current projections that have been impacted on the former chancellor's recommendations. So with those three kind of factors, we have arrived at this 15 to 25% budget reduction. But again, it does not take into account any potential state or federal assistance. From there, we wanted to be very clear about what the models needed to do in terms of the goals for the models. And you see all of those listed there. Again, reiterating the 15 to 25% reduction, and I think it's also important to note that we do not anticipate cutting our way out of this problem. Another way to go about it is to generate revenue. So we are also considering many ideas in terms of how to generate revenue so that we meet our budget for that year. And I think that this will help us be in the best place for recruitment as we move forward in that 2021 to recruit for the 2021 fall semester. So there you see in front of you all the goals that we have for this particular initiative. And then scrolling down a little bit further, I wanted to, although I'm not going to share exactly, the direction, because tomorrow is actually the first time that the task force will get together with Provost Atkins. I am serving as a resource to the committee. The final recommendations will come to me, so I just want to be at present serving as a resource. But here what you see are paraphrased examples that have been submitted by either faculty or staff, community members, parents, alumni, some of those stakeholder groups that I mentioned earlier. And we noticed that our ideas primarily came in 4 major categories. You see ideas as to how to curtail costs or address issues related to academics, others related to facilities, others to the types of partnerships or collaborations that we can engage in, others involving funding, and then finally others that couldn't be put in one particular category. They could have spread across multiple categories or been a unique idea altogether. So that is where we are right now. We are, our meetings will take place largely in the month of May in preparation for the board meeting on June 15th. And by then we are hoping to have a more, a specific model for you to consider that will include recommendations both on the expense side, on the revenue side, and a model that we feel will position NVU to succeed for future generations. I'll stop there to see if you have any questions.
Thank you, Elaine. Reactions, thoughts, and questions from the trustees. And I can't see everyone, so you may just have to speak up. Jim, I can see you.
Yeah, Elaine, that looks like a lot of work in a short period of time. So it's impressive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen?
You're muted, Karen.
I said Godspeed. It's an interesting and impressive roster, and I'm glad people will have the opportunity to discuss this. Hope something good comes out of it.
I'm very excited by all the people and all of the community support that we're getting. Aside from even this committee, please know that people have written countless emails making wonderful suggestions that we are bringing also to the table. So I can't imagine that with this kind of community interaction that we're not going to be able to come up with something truly astounding.
Bill?
Yes, Elaine, thank you. I want to just be sure that one other point of interest in NVU and then with Vermont Tech, et cetera. The legislature, because many of our members are hearing from many constituents, as you all know, are concerned and wanting to support the Vermont State Colleges system. So there has been a process by which legislators could add suggestions to Dylan, help me with the name, but a gathering of ideas to support the VSCS system. And I want to make sure that they are getting directly to the college initiatives, such as what you're describing, Elaine, and are not missed as things are looking specifically for NVU or for Vermont Tech or Castleton or community college, et cetera. Do you know if that connection has been made? And Dylan, let's make sure that we as legislative trustees ensure that those suggestions are making their way directly to the campus leadership.
We are trying to funnel all suggestions into our NVU Strong website.
Yes.
So if we can just get that, if those suggestions can be put into that website, then we'll have them all ready for the committee to consider.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was looking for, the actual way to make sure that suggestions that we're hearing as legislators get appropriately directed into campus initiatives.
Right, that would be helpful.
Okay.
NVU Strong website.
So then I have a second question, and that touches on what Sophie mentioned earlier, I believe, which is in addition to campus-focused initiatives, of which are primary and very important, that there really will need to be also a system-wide educational convening. And Elaine, you just happen to be going first, so maybe I'll ask you and Sophie to comment on how you see the connection between NVU Strong type initiatives and similar initiatives on other campuses and a system-wide collaboration to look at changes at a system level.
Absolutely. I think all of the presidents have agreed that we do need some system level discussion. And to that end, I know that particularly I've been working very closely with Pat and Joyce, because Pat has a nursing program already on the Linden campus. And then Joyce and I have been discussing the possibilities of looking at potentially relocating a center, maybe in St. Johnsbury, to the Linden campus as just one example. So they have both very graciously agreed to help us probably serve as resources for this task force, and to because they are going to be intricately involved in whatever solution that we come up with in the future. So that is one aspect. And also Karen Scolfaro has stated her interest in working with us related to duplicative programs, and just making sure that we can potentially, in some cases, position low enroll programs on the Johnson or Linden campuses at Castleton if they would be better served there, and vice versa. So she might have some that would make more sense on the NVU campus. So we have all agreed to work with each other in various capacities, depending on what the issue is that we are considering. So I've been very pleasantly kind of excited by that potential, because I think that we are really now all focused on making this work as a system as well.
Great.
Thank you. Other thoughts or questions for Elaine, anticipating that there'll be more, quite a bit more when we meet in a few weeks on June 1st, but anything else for today?
Yeah. At the risk, can I make one further comment?
I'm going to have one too, so you get one.
Okay, Elaine, as I listen, and I know some of the programs that NVU offers and some at each of the other campuses, I don't think we can too often emphasize the importance and deep value to the state of Vermont's economy for the training that is provided on our campuses for the professionals, as you nurses, school guidance counselors, teachers, dental hygienists. I mean, it crosses different campuses, but I continue to believe that the work of the Vermont State Colleges system on our campuses as it pertains to the workforce in Vermont is simply not fully understood or appreciated broadly in the state. And when we're talking about preserving this system, we're talking about preserving training for the workforce of Vermont. And I think we need to find ways to constantly bring that to our public's attention.
Yeah, I just in terms of one quick example for that, when I look at just how many licensed mental health counselors,
I was just thinking of them. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you can see the outreach all over the entire state of Vermont. I mean, we are the major producers of this particular category. And like you said, it goes across many categories: teachers, business people. I mean, all types of categories that we are responsible for training so many of the employees in Vermont. And when you look at our heat maps to see where our students come from, you will see that most of them are really surrounding, they're very geographically centered around our institutions, because people are trying to access the institution that is close by to their homes and then get out into the workforce.
And then stay in Vermont to
And then
continue
stay
to
in
work.
Vermont. Exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I know we all wonder how David Silverman would have turned out if he hadn't had the benefit of his time on the hilltop in Johnson. He's probably one of our best examples of how you can really turn somebody around.
Well, yeah, that's probably true, but let's not discount the other 19 NVU graduates that are at just my company.
It's great. Elaine, I have one quick question, and it's for the other presidents as well. Very shortly, or not too long ago, rather, each of you poured heart and soul into an updated strategic plan for each of your organizations. Is there anything in your current thinking that either builds on that plan or takes it in a different direction?
I don't think we're taking it in a different direction. I think that we're just we are continuing to move that plan forward, because those pillars are critical to. I mean, our first pillar was ensuring financial sustainability. So, I mean, this is smack dab right in that that work. So it doesn't take us off in a different direction. I think it continues to build, and then some of our other initiatives like community engagement, like ensuring that there's quality professional liberal arts training for our students, those continue.
Thank you. Okay. Sophie, shall we transition?
Yes. So I think Pat Moulton and VTC would be a good next up.
Hello, Pat.
Hear me? Is that what you're saying? Duh.
There you
Okay.
are.
Now, can you hear me now? As they like to say. Okay. Sorry about that. My brothers would tell you I'm rarely muted, so that they would have enjoyed seeing that. So thank you for the opportunity to talk with the board members today. I wanted to start by just talk a minute about our financial situation. We are slated to end this fiscal year with a surplus. We anticipate pushing that, and that's even with all our COVID expenses. We anticipate pushing that all into strategic reserves. We credit that with more students in the residence halls, as well as some decent enrollment this year. That puts us operating in black of the 3 of the last 4 operating years, with a small deficit in fiscal 18 that we could easily absorb. As with all of us, fiscal year 21 is the wild card, as there's so much that's unpredictable there. Wanted to talk about our securing the future work, and you'll recall last summer and fall, it seems like years ago, but it was just last summer, we were talking about our securing the future. And at that time, I had reported to the board, we wanted to focus on what's core to our mission of education. And to that end, as it relates to our anaerobic biodigester, we had attempted to sell or lease that. We had at one point 8, 9, 10 companies interested. We asked for a request for proposals. We only had 2 respondents to the request for proposals. Of the 2, one provided a plan to wind down operations. The other gave us a plan that was not financially feasible. Therefore, we are proceeding with shutting down and mothballing the digester. And that will be completed by the end of this month, end of May. We'll be mothballing it for another day, and eventually at some point we may make a decision about whether or not to sell off certain assets, but right now it will be mothballed and operations will cease. That will have ramifications for farm operations, manure spreading, et cetera, so we'll have to update all those plans. We have plans to sell the Enterprise Center. We have listed that center on Route 66 with a realtor. We have some local interest from a group that's quite excited about looking at for a multi-use facility, and one use could be daycare, which is of huge demand here in the region. I would also report this is the last semester we'll be teaching equine studies and fire science here at Vermont Tech. Those two programs are ending. Possibility of rebuilding fire science at some later date. I'm pleased to say we've found homes for all of our horses. None will be euthanized. We are selling the tack and other equipment, and we're working on selling our fire truck and other equipment related to that work. So we are still very much focused on trying to get rid of other assets that are not directly core to our education mission. Next category I would call COVID-related planning, long-term planning, strategic planning. We have a very engaged and energetic community at this point, both on and off the campuses. Ideas are flowing in from everywhere for fall and long-term. We too, like Elaine, are looking at revenue generating ideas, as well as how we could right size, look at facilities reuse and consolidation. I think this COVID experience has helped us understand that working at home is viable, and we probably don't need all the square footages that we have on all our campuses and a dedicated office to every person. We could be looking at shared and hotel space, and we're taking a good hard look at that. We have created a transition task force email address for folks to send us information, and as soon as I get done with this meeting, I'm broadcasting out a message about our very first meeting of a task force, which we had last Friday. We have set up a transitional advisory task force, we're calling it, which is 15 members plus myself. I'm trying to be more resource myself, as Elaine has suggested, but I also am sitting in on all these meetings. It's 15 members comprised of faculty, staff, students, and members of the administration. All our collective bargaining units are represented in that task force. And the goal of the task force is to assist in the development of a plan to transition Vermont Technical College to a more sustainable institution able to withstand vulnerabilities exposed by COVID-19 virus, as well as the challenges of the system. So that group is working, had our first meeting last Friday. Alan Rogers has graciously offered to be a facilitator. He does that very expertly and has proven that thus far. We're starting with goals of what I'm calling sort of goals and guardrails. What should the college look like post-transformation? And we're focusing in 5 areas. Number 1, students. What's good for students, affordability, access, etc. Number 2 is access and assuring that we can expand our reach across the state and elsewhere. 3rd is community, looking at our geographic community as well as the college community. 4th is finances and assuring our plan comes up with a positive plan for positive operations, including maintaining strategic and other reserves. And the 5th, but not last but not certainly least, is programming, taking a good hard look at our programs and how we deliver. I will say some of our other future planning, I mean, faculty have really been quite energized, and we're now really having conversations about how we might consolidate certain programs, hyper majors, if you will, with minors that have good, strong minors. We're also looking at decentralized and low residency delivery options. Those are already being considered for the fall, really trying to figure out how we open access to non-traditional students. I've set a deadline of July 1 to try to come up with a plan. That's fast, but we know we need to move quickly to give certainty to our students and our communities. In addition, the town of Randolph has really gotten quite energized as well. Many business and community leaders have come forward offering assistance, forming groups themselves. We have a group that's really focused on repurposing buildings that can meet community and regional needs, daycare, affordable housing, etc. And we have groups that are assessing certain buildings on campus as we speak. We also are looking at a special task force for our agriculture program, including the farm. We have lots of interest. A lot of people have reached out, including Ellen Kaler from the Sustainable Jobs Fund, who's offered to assist us with a farm to plate type planning process, trying to do something a little shorter, but her success with farm to plate and activating the ag community, I think will be helpful. And we're working with our team here to come up with a process that sounds like it would work for us to reimagine what our agriculture program can look like. Regarding our planning for fall of 2020, we are planning on returning with face-to-face classrooms. We've communicated that out to our students. Obviously, we're monitoring the Department of Health and Centers for Disease Control to see what we're going to be free to do. We have a protocols committee looking at various scenarios for reopening. We're following guidance that's out there, and there seems to be new content every day. AVIC has been great about sharing, the Association of Vermont Independent Colleges has been great about sharing information from the private colleges and what they're working on. We're clearly working on backup plans if we cannot return to face-to-face, that include low residency, remote delivery, but also looking at staggered access to labs, because that's been the biggest challenge for students, is getting access and then being able to work together in labs. We're planning on holding our 2020 commencement, which was supposed to happen this weekend, in September during homecoming, if we can still make that happen in September. That was the students' choice. We surveyed our graduating seniors to see what they would prefer. So in summary, we're doing well financially. We're progressing on our already planned securing of the future work, and we're moving forward with an accelerated process of planning. To your question, Mr. Chair, regarding strategic plan, we had pretty much gotten close to finishing our 6th year and wrapping that up when all things COVID attacked. I would say a lot of that strategic plan has been accelerated, really. It's going to have to move faster, but I also think this COVID has motivated folks to think a little more out of the box, so that I think some of what we might have considered longer term for strategic plan, we might be able to accomplish much faster. So I, like Elaine, I don't think we're moving in a different direction as much as we've accelerated, and we're really building on what we had planned to move it forward faster. That is the extent of my formal remarks, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thoughts and questions for Pat? James.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. I guess it was about a year ago or so, you came out with a number of different ideas I thought had a lot of merit, having to do with reusing or repurposing parts of the campus. And the question, I guess, is as much directed at Church and Sophie as you, but at what point would it be a good idea to begin discussing those things? Or maybe you have already.
Well, I would say that we're moving forward. That's some of what the community group is, the Town of Randolph group is really looking at what buildings would lend themselves well for what kind of reuse. And I've asked them to kind of focus on the north end of campus, if you will, a couple of dorms, and maybe even up to 1 or 2 either administration or classroom buildings, if we can in fact consolidate our footprint, recognizing we probably don't need all these offices, probably don't need to heat all these buildings, but we are moving forward with that. And we have been, I've talked briefly with a local affordable housing group, and we're working very closely with our Regional Development Corporation on those plans, but haven't really put a lot of pen to paper about that yet.
Thank you.
Dylan.
Thank you, President Moulton. Just wanted to jump off of a little bit of what Bill Lippert said previously, but you know, we're all aware of the value of these institutions to equipping our workforce. And over the past month, I received so many suggestions in my email account from members of the business community saying, my goodness, Vermont Tech is absolutely essential to us meeting our workforce needs in the coming years. I'm just wondering, you had indicated that you had these task forces going, you had a few buckets, and I'm very pleased to hear agriculture's in there. It's a really exciting opportunity that fits Vermont well, of course, but how does business fit in? You mentioned community and other task forces. Where's business in that mix? Because I know that they are fired up and ready to help. Well, thank you for that, Dylan. I've been talking with a lot of our employer partners. We've been getting ideas from our employer partners. Several have reached out to say, count me in. There are some of the local employers who are keenly interested in some of our affordable housing. There isn't an employer that we work with that isn't keenly interested in making sure we're still here, including to the point of potentially offering instructional and classroom space in their facility. I have not pursued a lot of that, but and as you know, we have advisory committees with each program, or hopefully you know. So we will be reaching out to a lot of our core employer partners as we roll this process forward and say, here's what we're thinking. How does this sound to you?
I intend to do some specific outreach to some employers that we currently do on location, instructional and education, to see if they might want to be a partner to open that up to other students. Again, with the idea of decentralizing out to our employer partners as well as possibly career and tech ed. I don't have a specific committee for that, but you're making me rethink that. So thank you for that question.
Very good. Adam?
Yes, sort of in the same vein here. I wonder, to what extent are you exploring some of the perhaps partnerships with CTEs? You know, I think a lot of the support around the Randolph campus was just that, on how to strengthen the campus. How are you balancing also exploring a new delivery model with the pressures to retain the campus? And are you mixing that in? And I guess for just to continue, I have the floor here. It seems to me, Church, that, you know, so much of this, what we're talking about today, really is system-wide, but what we're hearing today is campus focus. So as we do move to more of a system-wide discussion, understanding how that's all going to braid together is front and center for me. Thank you. So Pat, is that in your thinking on how to make that CTE connection?
Absolutely. It's in my thinking. I'm trying to let our task force sort of evolve some of their own ideas, but some of my thinking is to partner with CTE around certain programs and potentially have them be our lab locations regionally. I look at programs like advanced manufacturing, auto, diesel, et cetera, where we're working to build those direct pathways. What if we were actually offering instruction in those, at those locations? We might have to look at some flexible scheduling, but yes, that is absolutely in my mix, and my thoughts and my ideas, and much of the leadership team here. So yes, we are mixing that in, and really looking at that decentralized method of delivery.
Do you find a struggle then with balancing the sort of rallying around the campus notion and strengthening the campus in that delivery?
You know, I'm not finding much resistance to that. I think there's a recognition that our footprint here needs to get right-sized, and that yes, opening up access to students is going to make it more affordable if we're at a low residency, or even better yet, if students are home, they're taking classes either in their living room or at the CTE. We're taking a slightly different approach than the associate's degree at CTE study that the legislature had funded, where we were actually looking at trying to see if we could hire CTE faculty, et cetera. We're running into accreditation and other issues with that, but if we could offer remote distance learning from here with maybe like a lab tech at the CTE, then we're not duplicating faculty, we're not worried about ensuring the quality of the remote delivery, because we're doing the remote delivery. It's the hands-on lab piece that would be either a lab tech there, or, you know, potentially we're rotating faculty around. We haven't gotten into the specifics, but not finding much pushback with that idea. The idea of sort of handing over our associate's degree, that's where we get an issue. And I'm simplifying that description too much, but as we start to put some more meat on those bones, we'll be able to talk more specifically about those things, Adam.
Thank you.
Very good. Janet?
Yeah, so Pat, is VTC and CCV continuing to come up with ways to consolidate what I call the back office?
Thank you for that, Jana. Just as soon as I saw your little box light up, I said, darn it, I forgot to put that CCV, VTC and thing in there. And actually, as we were talking, Joyce and Lit and Andy and I are meeting tomorrow morning at 9 to continue that discussion. So yes, that is very much on the radar.
Okay.
Church, if I might ask a question, sorry, to follow up on what Janet just asked, and I'm not sure who the right response would be, but that sense of consolidated back office, is there any reason that's not a conversation across all 4 schools, and that it's just taking place with it? If I heard you correctly, it's just Vermont Tech and CCV at the moment who are in this discussion.
Correct. I can't speak to the rest of the system, but it's us to start that with that. And in part because we've had a long-term relationship with CCV around Hartness Library. So it's sort of a natural extension to take that the next step. But that may be something to bring up on a more of a system-wide. Yep.
Megan, if I can weigh in, I think that I would love us to think about that, but I don't think it all has to be centralized in the chancellor's office. I think what needs to happen is think about, okay, so how does an operation at the college, how does it take on the operation for that particular area for the system? So I think that there's ways to locate a lot of some of this work out at campuses and could be included in and expanded just with at an individual college. So I think that there's potential. I think the way that we've done some consolidations hasn't, it's come with a lot of baggage. And so I think we have to think about how we approach consolidation, perhaps in some different ways.
Okay. Good. Anything else for Vermont Tech? Then Sophie, where do we go? Oh, here's Bill.
Can't hear you, Bill.
Muted, Bill.
So you talked about a July 1st deadline. I'm just a little concerned that we have a board meeting in middle of June or toward the latter part of June, and whether as fast as July 1 appears to push the work, whether it's really going to be fast enough for us as a board to be able to look across the system and see where we are.
That's an excellent point. It roughly gives us, well, at this point, a little less than 2 months.
I know it's all happening very fast, but when we meet as a board on July 17th and 18th, I think there will be some expectation that we will have some sense from campuses and across the system as to what we're looking at.
That's our hope, is we're ready by then. And hopefully I'll have some updates for you at the June meeting as well.
Excellent. Chancellor, where do we go from here?
Castleton.
Okay.
Karen. That's it.
Okay.
Karen.
Well, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for some opportunities here to say a few words. You will be witnessing a handoff. This will be my last board meeting, and at your committee meetings on June 1st, you'll have my interim successor, Jonathan Spiro. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to say a few remarks, and then I think he's going to share just some thoughts about reopening in the fall for Castleton. So I wanted to start by answering our Chair Hines' question about what's changed about the way we're looking at our sustainability and our planning. And, you know, I would say from our perspective, when we were responding to the white paper and working on the future of Castleton, we were focused on the future of Castleton. You know, each of the presidents were working on their own institutions within their communities, internal and external, to make sure that we're strategizing well and looking at how to move into the future. What's changed is this idea of more of a systems focus. You know, we, over the last, couple of months, and certainly with the impact of COVID-19, more than ever, we have to find ways to partner and, gain efficiencies, share resources, and look at what will we look like, to serve Vermont for decades to come. So the way that we've started to look at this at Castleton is, we look at our strategy for sustainability, which, over the last 3 academic years, in terms of dealing with an operational deficit and thinking about how to bring Castleton forward, we had a combination of some expense control and some bold actions, but also looking at revenue generation. You've heard this from all of the presidents so far. It has to be part of the formula that we're thinking about. How will we make sure that we're continuing to sustain healthy revenues for the institution? So I'm going to first say a few words about costs. Similar to what you've probably heard from everyone else, we're all doing this. This spring at Castleton, we did freeze our spending. and put a hold on all of our capital projects so that we would make sure that, you know, we were well positioned as we're coming through the challenges of COVID-19 and the refunds. We sustain the highest refunds because we have the most residential students. So that impact on us was pretty substantial. So we have to look at this from a viewpoint of not only where we're coming from this spring, but how do we move into summer and into the fall in a healthy way. So some of the other things that we're looking to do in terms of restructure and expenses is we're looking at our soundings program, which is a university-wide program that introduces our students to the fine and liberal arts. And we've come up with some ideas that to restructure that program in such a way that will help us save some expenses there while still delivering a sound model to our students, because we still believe in that. In addition, we're starting to look at some of the growth areas, building on the work that we've done over the past 3 years, which includes opening additional locations in Killington and Bennington. I'm pleased to say that while particularly in Bennington, we were predicting that we would take a loss on those programs in the first year, because you're establishing a new location with fewer students and establishing some initial costs. But we ended up being in the black, both with Killington and Bennington in its first year, but also positioned ourselves in such a way that we're making a name for ourselves in those regions, and we're seeing a lot of interest. So there's opportunity for expansion there, and we're really focused on that, hyper-focused on that. Our chairs across campus are looking at ways to convert many of our 4-year programs to 3-year programs using a similar model to what we're doing in Killington. You're going to see more of this cooperative education model coming out of Castleton. This is an opportunity for students to complete their bachelor's degree in 3 years, to secure paid internships that also allow them to earn credits while they're learning on the job, so that when they graduate, they now have both a credential and a resume. And, you know, we really believe this is the future, and we want to see, our academic leaders have really come together around this concept. They see the value, and they're working really hard to gain a competitive edge with this that will help to draw people to Vermont. That's the other piece of this. It draws people to the state because it helps students to plant roots in the workplace while they're in school. And then hopefully we want them to stay, which would be great. We're looking at expanding on the cooperative models at Killington. We have 4 collaborative partners that we've identified, and we're in the works of just bringing that to yet another location. Looking to probably start a class of about 15, but it won't be till fall of 21. And then leveraging our Title III grant, that's pretty substantial, the $2.25 million. We are already seeing gains in terms of student support with this Pathways to Graduation. We've got all of our staff in place. We've already started technology upgrades, which has been really critically important right now with our conversion, our evolution to remote delivery, and how we've been able to be successful with that. It's an ongoing process. As you know, I think for all of the institutions, probably us in Vermont Technical College was the heaviest lift, because we have so many hands-on programs, and we weren't as well positioned with online as our partner NVU was. So it's been quite a heavy lift, but I'm really proud of the work that the team's done. And then I think in terms of the systems mentality, this idea of collaborations within the system, you heard President Collins talk about discussions about how we might share resources and reduce some duplicative programs, and identifying where the students will best be served, so that we're not spending additional money if we're able to serve the state of Vermont in new ways. And then, so for us, you know, we now are up to about 20 pathways with CCV. We're a very strong partner for their graduates. We do offer the same tuition, which you'll probably remember, we're still doing that. And we're working really hard to expand those pathways. We have very clear access points for our prospective students, so it's really easy for them to see what's required, what they need to do at CCV, and how they would transfer to us upon graduation to be able to seamlessly get their bachelor's degree at Castleton. But we've also started discussions about shared space with CCV, VTC. You know that we have the nursing programs. CCV currently offers the gen ed for our nurses in Bennington, so that's huge. And then I mentioned the duplicative programs, and then also eliminating some of the low enrolled programs and reducing some of those. And the way that we're deciding, starting to take a look at really which programs are the right programs for our area, that's involving a campus-wide collaboration, as well as our external partners, the Rutland Advisory Group, our strong partners in terms of the sites, Mike Salamano at Killington, Tom D at Pennington, Claudio Fort in Rutland, and some of these others. So, those discussions are going to be really important to make sure that all of our curriculum remains relevant and it's what folks need moving forward, so that Castleton continues to provide a really important service to Vermont and to our region. And I guess the last piece is in terms of, as our fellow institutions are looking at what this future model will look like, we are better positioned now to be able to offer remote delivery across the state. So, say that President Collins and her team identify programs that they feel it would be helpful if Castleton were to adopt and handle. We are in a better position now to do more decentralized educational processes statewide. So any way we can step up to help there to serve throughout the state, we're ready. We're happy to do that. And that's with that. And I don't know, Chair Hines, if you want to open for questions first, what Jonathan Spiro was going to just say a few words about some of the discussions we've been having about our phased reopen, the way we're approaching fall, which I think might be helpful for all of you to hear.
Why don't you go ahead, Jonathan?
Thank you, Chairman Hines. Thank you, President Scalfaro. Regarding the fall, Castleton very much hopes that we will open in a face-to-face mode, because we do face-to-face learning really, really well. However, we have many, many options, and as someone alluded to earlier, those options are increasing by the day as we consult with experts nationwide about how we can open up in the fall. So in the great tradition of administrators everywhere, we have convened a task force to explore our options in the fall. And I'll just say that I'm very pleased that our task force is coordinating with our sister institutions, not just in the VSCS, but all of our sister institutions, including the privates here in Vermont, because cooperation is in the best interest of our students, so that we all institute basically the same practices at the same time in the fall, but also because, frankly, we don't want anyone to try to get a competitive advantage by making overly optimistic promises about being fully open in the fall. So more to come within the next few days regarding more concrete ideas for the fall. But as we say, along with President Moulton said earlier, we certainly hope to open up face-to-face in the fall.
Thank you, Jonathan.
If I, Mr. Chair, if I could just add one thing, just a cautiously optimistic information for y'all is that as of right now, pending being able to reopen in the fall, our deposits and our registrations are comparable to last year. So and these are registrations and housing deposits that have happened during this remote delivery period. So so again, we're cautiously optimistic, but we are certainly taking measures in the event that, let's just say we're cautiously optimistic.
Very good, thank you. Okay, thoughts and questions for Castleton? Adam.
I think this is probably for more than just Castleton, but I'm wondering in the cautiously optimistic mode of planning, in the alternative, if there are Vermont students who are planning on going outside of Vermont for their education, what kind of opportunities our system can have in planning for alternative classes for those folks as August 1st or August 15th comes and those folks are not leaving the state for their education.
Jonathan, do you want to take it, or do you want me to go, or it's up to you?
Why don't you start, President Scalfaro?
Okay. So if I understand what you're asking, Adam, you're thinking about folks who were not planning to stay in Vermont, were planning to pursue their education outside of the state, but as the summer comes, we are inviting folks to apply late. We are trying to increase the level of flexibility so that we can serve students and trying to get that messaging out so that they feel comfortable looking at the Vermont State Colleges, in this case, Castleton, for their educational needs. And you know, we've traditionally done, especially in the last couple of years, because we, you know, as you know, we had the teach outs. We had the 3 closing institutions in our area last year. We've gotten pretty nimble at providing that personal attention in transcript evaluations and quick turnaround and helping students see that clear pathway and understand exactly what they can expect and what the timeline will look like from the moment they step foot on campus to graduation. So I think those are the most important things, that they have a comfort level and a team in place that will provide them with hold their hands, so to provide them with the support all the way through. And we will embrace them, you know, even if it's a little bit later than normal.
Okay.
So Pat, you're muted.
If I could add, Mr. Chair, as to your question directly, Adam, as we start to confirm what programs we can offer remotely and or in a non-traditional schedule, we're going to be blasting that out, similar to what President Scalfaro said. We know there are folks who are going to want to stay home either for this semester or perhaps the whole year, and we want to give them an opportunity to do that here in Vermont.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Jonathan.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to add that I'm normally a very pessimistic person. So it is, excuse me. So I believe that some of the students who have already committed to Castleton for the fall are in fact not going to attend in the fall for lots of reasons, including the fact that their families will be experiencing financial hardships in the weeks and months to come. That's the pessimistic part. However, I'm very optimistic that many Vermont students who currently go to college out of state are going to be coming home in the next months and will want to stay in Vermont in the next year and will want to attend college in the VSCS, whether it's face-to-face or remote. So I think we're going to see, well, one of Stephen's M curves. We're going to see a slight dip in current enrollment and then a rise, maybe up to the day before the semester starts or even into the first week of the semester. So that's the optimistic part of me. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, this is Janet. After listening to, you know, the NVU and the Castleton and what Pat said, maybe this is more of an idea, but I think there's a way to share resources on an academic program that doesn't necessarily mean, hey, why don't you take this program and we'll take that program. I think if you could use the concept Pat was talking about, where maybe you have a core, I'll use the word professor or lecturer on, I don't care, biology, but at each, and that person is located at Campus A, but the lab is supported at both locations. So I think you could share professors and have the project work and the lab work be done at the unique locations, but get some leverage out of synergy. And then that would leave each college still with this like wide range of things you could go for versus showing up somewhere and realizing that your choices just got really limited because you were moving a program, you know, just to one place. And that, well, that will make sense for some things. I think there might be another creative way to keep your breadth of offerings, yet do it with a different model that actually saves on your resources. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Jonathan.
So I'm compelled to respond because, Janet, because I, for years, have preached that idea. You gave the example of biology. I've always given the example of Chinese and Arabic. There's just not enough students at Castleton to support a full-fledged language program in Chinese and Arabic and maybe even other things. But are there enough students in Linden and Castleton and around the state to support that program? You betcha. So I love your suggestion. Thank you.
And a number of us who were in NVU Johnson for one of the Secure the Future open forums, we had a very eloquent student talking about how he felt that in order to be a good graduate with a business major, he needed to also be able to speak Spanish. And he was chagrined that he couldn't take Spanish as a minor. So even if it's not Chinese, perhaps even even a larger cohort might feel the way that he does, saying that in the way his country is evolving, college graduates ought to be able to converse in Spanish as well. Other thoughts or questions? Yes, Lynn.
Yes, thank you. I also heard something at those Secure the Future open forums. I heard people at NVU, this may be something Elaine wants to, I think I mentioned this to Elaine last September at our retreat, but I heard students who were unhappy about the fact that they went to one of those two schools and their major, XYZ major, they only had a couple of courses and the other courses were over at the other campus. And it occurred to me that this was one college with two different campuses, but there's no reason why someone should stay at one campus all 4 years. You might start at, in this case, NVU, but it could be used other campuses as well. You could start with the studies that you start with in one campus, go back and transfer in and live in the dorm on the other campus for the next year or so, take some more courses in that major or those courses you want, and then go back to the original campus. You know, I think that we have to open up the paradigm a little bit here, and whether it's taking biology with a different lab in another school or whether it's the situation with NVU, there should be flexibility to be able to move around. You're not necessarily, once you've committed to one campus doesn't mean you are stuck at that campus. You can have flexibility and move around.
A lot of nodding heads. Thank you, Lynn. Anything else for Castleton? And again, this is all the prelude to what we'll be hearing a lot more about in June. Okay, Sophie, I think it's obvious that we now turn to President Judy.
Yes, it is.
Welcome, Joyce.
Hey, thank you very much. And thanks for the opportunity to sort of share where CCV is. And I will say that you've heard it from all three of the presentations. CCV is very much a part of the planning. But we're at this point, we will be taking our lead from each of the colleges as they put together some plans. So I think that while I am having close conversations with the presidents, I also think we're also trying to let some conversation and ideas gel from the colleges as well. So know that we are having conversations at lots of different levels. I did want to also bring the board up to date on some of the things that are happening at CCV, because I want to assure you that we are never a college that is sitting still. And so just to let you know where we are, for example, with summer, you know, we moved all of our classes from on ground to online for summer, where we will launch 365 classes in a little over a week. And right now we have more than 2,500 students enrolled, and our actual, we're quite, I hesitate to say this because we still have another 10 days of enrollment, but we are matching last summer's enrollment right now. So that's, we're happy about that. But again, I'm always cautious because if the last student walked through our door and no one else registered, we wouldn't be in good shape, but that we aren't having those indications. A couple other things that I think give you an indication of sort of our work in terms of constantly being responsive to what's going on in the environment. Last week, and you may have seen the press release, CCV was one of 67 colleges and universities across the country that was designated as a second chance Pell institution. And what that means is that we will be able to work with incarcerated students and they will now be eligible for Pell. Inmates who are incarcerated are not eligible to apply for Title IV funds, but the federal government is trying a pilot, and we were one of those schools that was selected. So it's that we have been offering, I think we've had a close relationship with the Department of Corrections and have been offering some courses with philanthropic support in the Northern Correctional Facility in Newport, and it's been highly successful to the point where the superintendent said this has changed the culture of this prison. And I want to be really clear, my goal is not to help inmates get a degree. My goal is to help them so that when they are ready to be released, they have some skills, they have some hope, and they perhaps will be able to reduce the recidivism rate in Vermont, which is now hovering right around 50%. So so now we will not have to use philanthropic dollars. Inmate can apply for financial aid. They will only be able to take CCV courses that are offered in the prison. So there's some restrictions around that, but it's pretty exciting for Vermont to be one of the 67 places, CCV to be one of the 67 schools, and for Vermont to be able to, we will have a chance to offer it in any of the prisons that are open to that. And I will say that Commissioner of Corrections has been a long fan of CCV, so that has been huge for us. The second thing I will just say, in terms of new developments, last week actually was quite a nice time for CCV. We received a significant grant from the Northfield Savings Bank. They select one entity every 3 years to substantially support them, and they are substantially supporting us to further develop our Flex grant, which means that, our Flex grant program, where we are offering courses that have 5 different entry points during the course of a semester. So it's really designed for the adult who wants to progress at a self-pace pretty quickly. We are modeling this after the Kentucky system, which has had really wonderful success with it. So those are just a couple of examples of what we're doing to get people started, which is important because we are the entry point. And then being able to help our students move on to NVU, to Castleton and Vermont Tech is a critical piece for us. And so I think that a couple of other presidents mentioned the work we're doing around the pathways and seamless course maps are critical to students. They want to know, what do I have to take at CCV and what can I take at NVU or Castleton or Vermont Tech, exactly what I need to take to finish my degree. And so that's been a lot of work, and it's a lot of ongoing work that we need to keep moving forward. In response to a couple of questions that have come up, Adam, you had asked about CTE collaborations, and Vermont Tech and CCV do a lot with CTEs. We actually have 500 students that are enrolled in CTE courses, that are students at CTEs now that are enrolled in CCV courses. And so I think there's a chance for both CCV and Vermont Tech to work closely together to deepen those relationships, but there's a foundation for us to build on. Right now it's more course by course as opposed to program, but I think over time we can further that development. And I also wanted to respond to Janet about some of the operations. I do think there's some work that we can do as a system around some of how do we think about it as a system, as opposed to each of us doing some of the work ourselves. And I'll use the Hartness Library. The Hartness Library is a collaboration that's been in existence between CCV and Vermont Tech for years. It is a national model. And I really think we should take a look at that, and it could be a national model for the system. And I know this can be highly controversial, But I can also tell you that CCV and Vermont Tech students are incredibly well served by the Hartness Library. And it's a combination of on ground and online, but we have embedded librarians that serve our online courses. Students get very good service. And I think if you ask any faculty member at CCV or Vermont Tech, they would tell you the same. So I think there's some places that I hope that we can find some, yes, efficiencies, but at the same time, better service. So I'll stop there, but I think there's a tremendous amount we can do. And I think CCV can be a partner in the work and the planning that is happening at the other schools.
Thank you, Joyce. Thoughts and questions for President Judy? Janet?
Two things. Well, first of all, Joyce, I think CCV gets some of these grants and things that you get are the result of the results that you deliver and the innovation you've shown, right? They don't just come out of the sky. So congratulations to you and your team for that. But to build on your comment about the synergy, and I think I brought this up in a previous trustees meeting, there's not just one model for consolidation of what I'll call the back office, right? It doesn't mean you put it in the chancellor's office. Okay. It can be that one college is best at something and they become the main HR function, but you have satellite people at your other campuses. You get the benefits of contracts like marketing in particular. It doesn't mean every school can't call their own shots and direction, but somebody's managing the contract such that everybody gets the best terms. Yeah. And you can divide those things across the system, sometimes just based on where the current best practice or strongest person is, and then the rest share in that. So there's a lot of ways to consolidate. And in the various consolidations I've gone through in my career, you always get 20%. You always, that's the low ball. So if you were to add up, all of some back office function today and what it costs, there's 20% opportunity there at a minimum when you get those right synergies. But I think people get afraid of losing control, a previous bad experience with how it was done. But there are very successful ways to do it. I don't think it's a risk that CCV and VTC work on some of these things together, because starting is better than talking about it and never starting. But to the previous point, I think Megan made, there is definitely opportunity, maybe once two are doing it to pull in the others or in the other direction. So I just think that's where there's some of the biggest financial opportunity will come from that.
Great, thanks.
Excellent. Adam?
Yeah, Joyce, thank you. I think so much of what we have in front of us is opportunity. And while I certainly appreciate that everyone's job here to solve the funding issue is complex enough, I think we really have an opportunity here to also broaden that conversation to include the CTE funding and how it fits into this broader system. So while I don't want to make that anyone in this call's primary responsibility, that's a complex issue, it certainly seems like the absolutely perfect time to bring that all together. So I hope we can do that. I'm happy to participate in that and encourage us all to think about that.
Great, thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
Other thoughts and questions? Okay. Well, as we mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, it's a good opportunity to also reflect on what we've heard from each of our presidents, as well as from Yasmin and Steve, and to let them know about any questions or follow-up issues that you'd like to have them address, either on June 1st or between now and then. I had a question for Castleton around the 3-year bachelor's degree and how that interleaved with student financial aid. And I think we all may have thoughts and questions to follow up on. And I would just encourage you to reach out to the appropriate president or to Steve and Yasmin with anything that you would like to have addressed between now and then. as I'm sure we'll have a long and rich day on the 1st of June. Sophie, any transitional remarks before we move on in the agenda?
The only other thing was going back to what Linda had mentioned in terms of planning for the fall, and Jonathan had touched on this as well, but the deans of students at each of the residential colleges are working with the planning process for the education sector to open up and what that will look like. And needless to say, it's an incredibly complex and challenging thing to do, from, planning for evacuation if there's a flare-up, contact tracing, testing, social distancing, all that stuff is very complex. But there is, and I think Jonathan had touched on this too, there is great collaboration going on between all the colleges in the state of Vermont to have input into that planning process, so that when the governor issues guidance or however that works out, we'll all be working from the same script. So I did want to just make sure that everybody knew that that work is going on, and our deans of students are working very hard on that.
Very good.
Otherwise, I think we've wrapped up this portion. If you wanted to move on to the next